Now the question is, do I shave it off? Do I make it just keep growing out, leave it kind of gross and disgusting, or maybe I should go for like some fancy beard, like the Samuel L. Jackson beard that goes out like that. Huh. Huh. It's gonna take some time. Oh, hey, a Focus Studio here. So today we're going to be talking about Angeloid's Pantheon. Now the reason we're talking about his Pantheon is because it's awesome, and it's also a good discussion about timings and how they work, and early game teams versus late game teams. This will actually be a two-parter. So tonight we'll be talking about Pantheon. Tomorrow we'll be talking about Pantheon. And both times we'll be going up against Karthus, played by different players. And we can see really the effects of a early to mid game composition, like what Pantheon does, what he has problems with, how the different Karthi respond to it. But let's just talk about Pantheon as a whole right now. So what does he do? Well, he's an early game aggressor when he's played in the mid and top lane. You want to poke a lot with his Q, you want to try and harass with the Aegis into, what is that called? The Spear Wall, his E combo. And you just want to keep pressuring with that. You want to keep it up. You want to get kills early because Pantheon gets very damaging, but he doesn't get a lot of survivability. You can't go Atmogs and expect to be all that useful. Atmos has been nerfed quite a bit. Warmogs is effective, but you need that damage fast. Also because he is a squishy melee, he does have problems with enemy stacking armor, which do get solved with the item builds. And yeah, let's actually just hop into the replay because with that we can go ahead and just see what's going on and get a good look at how Angeloid plays Pantheon. So this game is from the TSM Invitational. I believe this was number 8, possibly number 9. And Angeloid was playing against Monomaniac Ultimus. This is actually underrated, which is a Zingy's team. So really quickly, boots are bugged out. Those are boots of speed. They're not showing up as boots of speed, they're showing up as red squares. Now both teams take a very defensive early level 1. We have underrated heading over here just to keep the ward out, and Monomaniac, they're in a position where this could be an invasion, this could not be. I would consider this defensive just by the fact that they're looking for someone to show up in this area. They do eventually group up and go for the invade, and actually as this happened, underrated, take a second to, and actually group up here. They're both looking for each other. New spots out. Ultima's here. The ward goes down. These aren't hard invades. They're both teams just like looking for an opening right now. They do see that Gente has retreated. Defensive. Now, cool thing about level 1 invades is angles. We'll talk about this in a second. But look over here. Look at underrated what they're doing. They go to this wall and look at the vision that they have. Well, Prophet sticks his head out. But right now, if somebody comes in from this area, and they'll most likely show up right here by the edge, they'll just get completely ganked and stomped and die instantly. So this is almost like brush, because if you come out from either side, you're going to get caught and you'll probably die. Looking at how people have spread out though, it's not a huge deal for either team. Underrated do eventually go for the steal after both teams playing very defensively, with their wards. It's like an offensive defensive ward when you go out here. But that's beside the point. Let's go ahead and watch Angeloid. Actually, no, let's watch Gente. So let's look at his items. He has cloth armor and armor runes. He's at 45 base armor. And what is Angeloid at in terms of armor penetration? He is at 28. So Angeloid has a very specific plan when it comes to armor penetration. He has armor penetration quintessences, armor penetration marks, and his main goal is just to have a lot of penetration. As you can see, he does decent damage to Gente. That was about 60 damage with 1 Q. But he's got to be careful. Lay Waste, if it lands just on him, will do more damage than one Spear Toss. So Angeloid has to be very cautious. He can't take Lay Waste. And that's something scary about Pantheon, which, Director Cam, what are you doing? When you're playing Pantheon, you have to make sure you're not trading for the most part. Because he doesn't have sustain, he doesn't have any real way to effectively deal with his own, or the own harass coming at him. Especially when it comes from a magic user. So in this case, Gente, while he's casting spells, Angeloid can't get hit by anything he does. There is an invade onto this blue coming out from Ultimus, and this is a cool little fight. Essentially ends up being a 4v4, but people show up, or 3v4, and underrated, they know they can't fight, just go for a decent bit of poke. It is a very solid invade. Newton knows he doesn't have blue, but they still did enemy blue, so it's okay. For Angeloid, Watch how he plays in terms of movement. He's staying far forward, just to go for the harass, but at the same time he's being very, very cautious when it comes to actually taking damage. He's not going to just walk forward and Spear Toss Jinte. He wants to be just in a forward position already. And the reason for this is if you walk forward towards someone, there's a small little delay on casting Spear Toss, and just look out for that delay. If you cast Spear Toss and you just walk directly at someone, they can actually catch you in that cast animation. They can say, oh, he's walking towards me. If I time my lay waste now, when he's actually going to cast a spell, that's when I can hit him. And it's actually why characters like Xerath, for example, cast animations. Xerath can actually get punished by Gragas quite a bit, because if Gragas just lands his barrels, Xerath takes quite a bit of damage, and you know when he casts any of his spells, there's going to be considerable delay. At this point, Karthus goes back, buys Boots of Speed and some health potions. The reason for this is it's being cautious. He doesn't want to actually give an early first blood, an early kill, because Angeloid can snowball off that. And this is a very cool playstyle, because most mid laners are super greedy. Most mid laners will stay out to get as much CS as they can. Jinte pushed up a bit, missed a bit of CS, but now he has boots, now he has cloth armor. He's got a decent chunk of armor against Angeloid. And as you can see, those spear tosses, they hurt, but not all that much. So what does Arch do at this point? Well, he wants to check out spears, he wants to go for a kill, but the defense from Karthus makes it tricky. He also doesn't want to take any damage and harass just because he himself is squishy. So he's going to try and whittle him down. So right there, he takes Jinte down to half HP, takes a tower shot and takes a couple of late wastes. You can see taken down to 2/3 HP despite the fact that the tower shot didn't do anything from the passive. So he's going for trades now. He wants a jungler to back him up and just to be very cautious, very quick and defensive with the harass. Like he'll go and do his damage and get out. He's not going to try and follow up too much. He's not going to chase through the wall because he knows that 1 or 2 lay wastes, he's back to equal HP. And the thing with Karthus is if you do kill Karthus, you have to make sure he doesn't just kill you with his death, kill you with his passive, and he can actually push back the lane when he's dead, so you'll be in a worse spot. But it's kind of the same thing over and over. A Nunu will actually show up, cast Blood Boil into Angeloid just so he moves faster and he can do better harass. Karthus, by the way, at 374 move speed. Pantheon at 386, one of the fastest characters in the game. So, he's going for the kill now. He's going for a lot of aggression. Does he actually try and finish it off? Yes, flashes forward. And now this is the dangerous part. Look at Angeloid. Look how much damage he takes. He got the Ignite off. He knew he would get that kill, and he almost dies in response. And this is the gamble you make with Pantheon, especially against Karthus. This is a very Karthus-centric issue, which is every time you do kill Karthus, if he gets any harass off in response, there's a good chance he'll die. Now, let's talk about the skill build that Angeloid is going for. He has his points in Spear Shot, a point in Aegis of Zonia, 2 points in Heartseeker Strike. So it's very spread out right now. The reason for this is Heartseeker Strike and Spear Toss both have Spear Shot, both have very different goals. Spear Shot will do a lot of damage in terms of harass, but it's not the most damaging skill he has. At the same time, Heartseeker Strike, which is a very great skill for damage, it actually does not, it's not good for harass and poke. So he wants to be able to harass and go for kills. So because of that, he actually puts points into both skills, which I really like that style. Normally in League of Legends, how often you see Q, then a greater sign, then E, then a greater sign, then W, where it's just like you max this skill first, and this skill, and this skill. Angeloid does not do that. He just kind of keeps it equal because he knows keeping it equal will give him different options. Now he has a good harass Spear Toss, but normally he wouldn't. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the rewind button, and let's go ahead and talk about this little engagement, because this is what Pantheon has to his advantage. It's like Twisted Fate. You can go ahead and go for these cool fights. So they see this ward game in place, they see the enemy doing blue buff, the jungle Nunu and Sona are both there to back him up. What's Pantheon going to do? Just jump on everybody, because he knows where Cho'Gath is. So they go for the fight, Jinte just immediately gets blown up, and at this point, JD Wu has to back off, and just really, they're not in a great spot. Cho'Gath's showing up, JD Wu, I think he was trying to go get backed up by Cho'Gath, does actually, and he gets out of there. Now, why was that different from a TF gank? Like, I just want to watch this. I'm going to fast forward it, I don't need to see the rest of the fight. But why is this different from a TF gank? Watch Jinte's HP. So, he gets hit. Oh, he doesn't actually get hit by the very edge of it. but the burst that comes out from someone like Pantheon is higher than Twisted Fate's. It's riskier though because it can be interrupted and it does put him in a worse position overall. Also, if you get hit by the damage from Pantheon's ultimate, it's devastating. At this point, it's 400 damage at the center, 200 at the rims. So let's math it out. Mathing it out is fun. With the Brutalizer, Pantheon is actually at about 43 armor penetration, so very few characters actually have armor against him right now, or at least not more than 20. So Heartseeker Strike will do 60 damage, which is doubled against champions, so it'll do 120 per strike, so 360. You factor in Spear Toss will do 163, so that's about 520 damage, plus the extra damage from Skyfall. That's a 700 damage combo right there. That does not have a long cooldown. Heartseeker Strike goes down in cooldown as you level it up, and it's almost always off cooldown once you reach that max rank. So right now he's got a 700 damage combo. Karthus has 900 HP. At this point, if he lands a Heartseeker Strike or a Grand Skyfall, he could kill Karthus. Now, cool gank here. I just want to say this is a cool gank for the one reason that how often do you expect Ezreal to gank? How often do you expect the roamer to be the AD carry? And this is actually not really related to Pantheon. You can do that with any character. Pantheon or Ezreal himself has very good burst damage. Actually has 400 damage in terms of magic damage with his ultimate. But you don't expect Ezreal to roam like that. You don't expect the AD carry to do that. When you play mind games like that, when you go for these very distinct ganks and very unique plans, you can punish enemies for doing stuff like not warding or not calling the MIA and taking it seriously. At this point, though, Angeloid, he's in a very good spot. He's got 3 kills. He's equal on CS with Karthus, ahead by a tiny bit. But he's got Brutalizer, he's getting kills, he's got the Dragon, you know, they're kind of snowballing on underrated. Now, we're going to see what can happen with that. You have to remember that Pantheon himself doesn't have a lot of defense, he just has a decent chunk of MR from his runes and the fact that Pantheon gains it per level. But let's watch this fight. It's actually going to get worse for underrated. But we can cover what happened for this early part. So Pantheon's going towards that bot lane. They see the fight going down, and you know, this is the advantage of Pantheon. You're Twisted Fate in this regard. However, JD Wu is there. They actually expect Pantheon to show up. Once his ultimate goes down, JD Wu immediately goes into action. Chao's getting bursted on, but Angeloid just gets grabbed immediately. The Janna is trying to knock back the rest of underrated, and guess who teleports in? Cho'Gath. So, when you have a global character like Pantheon, you have to watch out for situations like this, where they just counter your global presence with their own global presence. So teleport on Cho'Gath makes him a global character. It means that if Pantheon ults somewhere, there better not be creeps or a ward up. If you have a Karthus in the enemy team too, it's almost the same thing. So at this point, Angeloid, he wanted the fight. He actually got a decent chunk of damage off, but they only picked off Chao on Graves. And part of it is because Pantheon, unlike, say, Cassiopeia, has to reposition himself a lot to actually do his damage. And of course, he himself is not a very tanky character. So he took that damage, he rolled over and died, but he did pick up a kill. But it's a 3-for-1 exchange. If you look at the gold, they're only down 1,000 gold now on Monomaniac, and that's because they lost that dragon. Now, back to Angeloid. He died. Rip in peace. And he's going for Last Whisper now. And this is because he thinks he's ahead, which he is. He has 4 kills. And you can see his damage is very high. He wants to make sure that the enemy team has no armor. And Last Whisper is also a good choice for Angeloid because he scales primarily off of attack damage. With Brutalizer, he actually has a decent chunk of cooldown reduction. Only 14. Wait, what? Oh, it's 10% Brutalizer. So he only has 14 cooldown reduction, but I thought Brutalizer was 15 for some reason. That's Yomuzo. But with that CDR, he's going to have good spam ability. He's going to have a Heartseeker Strike up almost all the time. And now he just wants to up his damage and up his penetration. Bloodthirster is a common item on Pantheon. It can work. I like the Last Whisper choice just because it's cheaper. The build-up is a little easier. You do get a little less damage for the build-up, but in the end, you get the damage faster. And it really solves the problem of people stacking armor against Pantheon. This is a very anti-armor build. Of course, Brutalizer and Last Whisper don't stack particularly well together, but the point is not that you're being super efficient. The point is you get a lot of damage off the build, and in the end, the enemy team will have no armor. Jinte, for example, building a Rod of Ages has a catalyst still takes a decent chunk of damage from the Spear Shot. Now, Angeloid, he's actually at 4-3 with his skills, so he's keeping them almost dead even just because he still wants that lane control. If he ever does decide that, maybe team fighting is not a good idea, he's going to have to go ahead and look for that option. Now, every time you see Angeloid leave that lane, there's a chance he'll ult somewhere. So here, Sayes is coming in, and the ult for Pantheon goes down. And, Cho'Gath, he still has his teleport on cooldown, he's actually in the fight. And once he lands, this is just the effect a Pantheon ult has. The damage was incredibly high, the burst was there. Angeloid is in the middle of everybody tanking. But just because he had the passive to help him out, and because of the CC coming in from Sona, from Nunu, they were all locked in place for the ultimate, which I want to point that out. Look how much damage they take from the ultimate. And look what Azingi does to actually keep people in place. So he flashes forward, uses the absolute zero, everybody's locked in place, and then Pantheon will land. Look for that damage, look for that damage. A good 300 damage to everybody there. Nex himself takes a giant chunk of burst. And that is something that people don't do with Pantheon normally. People don't try and exploit the fact that his ult actually does good damage. It's magic damage, that's important to remember. Magic damage is not the best type of damage for someone who stacks armor penetration, but it's still pretty decent. Angeloid now goes back to base. Dragon is not up, but he's getting the kills. He's trying to snowball. We've seen that despite the fact that he's ahead, he is at risk of dying to Karthus. He is at risk of dying in team fights. This is like most AP casters. Someone like Annie, for example, if they don't build a Rod of Ages, they have a very high chance of just dying in team fights, even if they're super scary. The thing is, Annie only has to survive for about half a second to get a really good burst combo off. Angeloid has to survive for the 3 strikes and Spear Shot, which is going to be about a second and a half, which is not a long time when you have to factor in that he has no real survivability. His defense right now is the fact that he has, well, actually he doesn't even have Merc Treads yet. He just has his base stats and his passive for survivability, which is not that great against Karthus or Cho'Gath or all the magic damage and AoE coming out from Ultimus. So, that's why you're seeing these fights chosen by Underrated. They're going for fights where Angeloid comes in the middle of it, more or less to clean up rather than to initiate. He does start fights, but he's starting fights in positions where the enemy team is already running, essentially. So it's a very cool strategy, a very unique style. And of course, this is why Pantheon's awesome. Look at that. Look at that burst. Of course, he has to run away because Exhaust is terrifying. But you can see he almost murdered Graves. At the counterpoint, Jinte almost murdered him in response. Now, one big advantage, of course, is that as this all goes on, he can teleport back to base, use ultimate to get back in the fight very quickly. And of course, there's that big scuffle going on bot as JD Wu trying to get picked off by Prophet. Does not happen. Angeloid, though, he has lost Whisper, though. He's now building a Frozen Mallet. Now, his armor penetration, let's go ahead and talk about that armor penetration. 43 armor pen, 46%. So, looking at Jinte, for example, that 43 armor pen applies first. That's going to be about 34 armor left onto him. And then, of course, if you factor in the penetration, it's going to be about 16. Okay, so team fight's going to break down. This is good use of Pantheon ult. Angeloid's still only level 10, doesn't have the rank 2, which would actually dramatically increase the damage and decrease the cooldown. How does this fight start? Well, we have a few members from Ultimus coming in. They knew that Skarner himself had to go back to heal. Pantheon ult is used here just to kind of lock in the enemy team. They have 2 choices, retreat into the ult or fight and die. And as you can see, that's a great little cohesion of fight and die being the best option. Because what did they really do? They did some damage with Karthus, but they just got murdered. And as Ultimus shows up, the rest of Underrated can do their thing. Pounce actually flashing and using the pool just for his slow, which is awesome. And this is Underrated setting up fights that benefit Angeloid the most. Now, why was that a good fight, but a 5v5 wouldn't have been the best fight? Because he was able to burst down Karthus, because it was such a small fight, there was not AoE to kill Pantheon. And that's important as Pantheon. You're not a 5v5 dominating champion. You're not Cassiopeia, you're not Karthus, you're not Vladimir. If you get into a 5v5 fight, there's a good chance you'll die and not be able to do any damage. Now, it's very easy to say, well, the enemy team isn't focusing Pantheon. And that's because the fights Underrated are getting into, they're not letting Pantheon get focused. Doing damage as Panth is not hard. You can go for pretty much any skill build. I like Angeloid the most because it gives him options, you know, going 4-4. But the problem with Pantheon isn't doing damage if you build offensively. It's not dying if you build offensively. If you build defensively, doing damage is going to be a huge issue. But like right now, Angeloid, he's got Last Whisper, he's got Brutalizer and Phage. His Spear Shot does 300 damage. His Heartseeker Strike does, let's see, about 600 damage in one little combo. And his DPS is nuts. But the way Underrated sets it up, it's not so much about his DPS, it's about him going into fights where they can't stop his DPS. He's an AD carry in a way. Like, you will not build Infinity Edge on him and Phantom Dancer and go for those auto attacks. But what are AD carries all about? Good positioning and keeping your damage up. Or Angeloid, look at the cooldown at Heartseeker Strike, it's 5 seconds. He's going to have that up very often. So because he'll have it up so often, they can't ignore him. And AD carries is kind of like, if you ignore them, they'll kill you. Same with Pantheon. If you ignore him, he'll kill you. And they have to set up fights where the enemy team has to ignore him or suffer greatly if they do focus him. And of course, he has the ultimate to supplement that. Has it really been a good global presence coming in from Ultimates? No, they've done it a couple times, but Cho'Gath Teleport has a much longer cooldown than Pantheon's ultimate. It's 5 minutes versus 2 minutes. So right now, Underrated can really do what they want. As you can see, Underrated at this point, they're just farming up. They have the turrets pressed. They're looking for just, you know, a big item build or a good opening, possibly another team fight, a dragon. They're ahead 5,000 gold, 6,000 gold, so they can still win a team fight despite the enemy team having Karthus. And this is the position you have to be in as Pantheon against someone like Karthus. Not every game is going to be a Karthus game, of course. But look at the game right now. Karthus, what does he have? A Rod of Ages, a Cloth Armor, and Sorc Shoes. So nothing, really, to actually defend himself or to do damage. He has a decent HP, yes, but Karthus, you really need a lot more damage. The HP is just to get in position at this point. What does Angeloid have? A crap load of damage. So the enemy team, what are their options against Angeloid? Well, they gotta burst him down, but they don't have the damage because they've had to build so defensively. When it comes to Karthus, Cho'Gath himself is going for a very defensive build, already has Glacial Shroud, now going for Wit's End, which will be offensive, but, you know, Cho'Gath auto-attacking Pantheon is not the biggest deal, especially because one auto-attack will be absorbed. Even looking just at Graves, all he has is the Bloodthirster, which, it's good damage, it's good burst, especially when combined with his ultimate, but he doesn't have Infinity Edge, he doesn't have attack speed with a Phantom Dancer, he's just kind of burst and lifesteal right now. He's a good duelist, yes, but Angeloid is a better duelist. So the enemy team right now, they're built for these small fights that Pantheon benefits from. The rest of his team, they're built for control. Now, actually, let's talk about Pounce for a second. He did something very cool. Check out that Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Now, Rylai's is not too common of an item on Vladimir in the pro scene. It's a very good item on him. But when you build a Rylai's, you're sacrificing a lot of either survivability from the Zonias or damage from getting a death cap in order to get more control. And the control works. You combine that with Absolute Zero from Nunu, and you actually have Pantheon ults being set up perfectly. So Dragon comes up, gets very quickly taken. We're going to have actually a bit of a lull as the teams kind of play passively. Underrated, they're looking for an opening, a very special opening. And it's a very cool play. It's something that I like that they did, because it's a mind game for the enemy team. People have perceptions of what you do, like what normally happens. What is a perception from a team that thinks the other team is doing Baron? Well, here, they see Pantheon top. Like, alright, Pantheon's up here. He's one of their ADs. He'll do Baron very quickly. He's probably not doing Baron. Eventually, they figure out, oh wait, no, they are doing Baron. And by the time they realize this, the fact that Pantheon's been top threw them off for so long that they don't react to it. Now, a fight comes out. They do kill the top turret. This is a combination of Nunu, Pantheon, and just all of the fast movement coming in from Underrated. It's a great pick. Just to go back in that chase, this is a very cool chase sequence just because, well, what's happening, they're all really damn fast because of the Reverie and Nunu. Look how fast Ezreal is, 450 move speed. Jesus Christ. That is very fast. That is a very fast Ezreal. At this point, Ultimus kind of gets murdered. I mean, they fought a team with Baron being caught off guard quite a bit. Next is split pushing top. This is the one saving grace. Someone has to go back. and when they do, you know, that's a little less push presence. But it's Vladimir, and Vladimir's not the best tower killer. Look at him go, killing those creeps. So, JD Wu, Chowd, Jinte, they'll be back up very soon, but Cho'Gath isn't there to defend, the inhibitor goes down, and this is one of those awesome situations for Pantheon, because he can now backdoor. TF is also a great backdoor, Pantheon, amazing backdoor. At this point, though, you know, he can press R, go for an opening if he sees the enemy team out of position, and backdoor. It's risky, of course. It's not what you want to do, just because if he does do that, he'll probably die in response. But now it's like, alright, they got this cool option. If they're ever in a bad spot, they can probably take an inhibitor out anyways. Now, Angeloid, his build, he went for Phage and then BF Sword, so he's still squishy. He only has 2,000 HP, only has 76 armor, only has 86 MR. I mean, just looking at Karthus, how much damage does his ultimate do? Not a whole lot. It's still 500 damage, 530, but it's going to be, you know, 300 damage after MR. He's still going to hurt Pantheon quite a bit. And this is true of the enemy team. They're still not the best 5v5 team. They're just ahead 10,000 gold. And this is why I'm going to do a two-parter on this. This is Pantheon when things go well. This is a timing for the enemy team that just got awful. Jinte, what items does he have? Nothing. He has ROA, but he doesn't have any follow-up from a Death Cap or Zonias or really anything. And you need that damage on Karthus. The rest of the team just doesn't really have a lot. Skarner doesn't have, for example, a Reverie to initiate properly. Cho'Gath does have Frozen Heart, does have Wit's End, but, you know, he doesn't have that much cooldown. He doesn't really have a lot going for him outside of being super hard to kill. And of course, you know, Janna, does she have a Reverie? No. Do they have an Aegis on the team? No. They need more, but they just have not been able to reach that point. So Angeloid, what's he doing? Split pushing. Because he can do that as Pantheon. Yeah! Look at him! He can split push. And something to note is his ultimate has a very short cooldown when it gets interrupted. So he can actually get silenced by Cho'Gath and not really lose a whole lot as a result. And of course, if Cho'Gath tries to teleport, you know, that stun will interrupt it quite a bit. Angeloid is being fairly cautious against Cho'Gath, though. He knows he does have 200 armor. Cho'Gath will probably lose to Angeloid in a sustained fight, but he doesn't want to get into a sustained war necessarily. But, you know, he's being aggressive. He wants to keep the pressure there because he knows if a team fight does break out, it's not going to be too hard for him to get away. And if it is too hard for him to get away, it's okay. 15-second cooldown. I'm actually not sure the exact number if it's 15 seconds or not. It's a very short cooldown, though. But Angeloid, you know, he's there with his team now, just applying pressure to next, just, you know, being a jerk, because he can. You know, he's behind the turret, but he can always show up over here. Pounce does get ulted on by Skarner. I actually feel really bad because he just can't catch him, though. The follow-up, it just isn't there, because, you know, Gen Tornadoes, all that don't matter when he just split pulls away. At this point, underrated. They're looking for that kill. They're looking for the opening. They're very close to just winning the game. This is like one of those last moments. The split pushing does come out, but unfortunately, JD Wu tries to stop it and, you know, kind of dies for it. Angeloid, what is he doing? He's ulting in. Where's he gonna ult? Where's he gonna ult? Onto the enemy turrets by the Nexus, instantly killing Jinte. Like, this is just that point you want to be as Pantheon. Eventually, if you're far enough ahead, you kill people instantly. Let's math out. Let's math out his damage. So 153, 158 for his Heartseeker strike. So about 320 damage every time you cast that per strike. So 900 damage from that. 960. Spear Shot does an extra 400 damage, so 1360 damage. Plus you gotta factor in he's auto-attacking too for 300 damage every time. He hurts. And this Pantheon, this is a good situation for him. This is a good game. But let's review what he actually did to get to that spot. So Pantheon, how did Angeloid get there? Importantly, he snowballed mid lane. He got a lot of early pressure from his jungler, a lot of early pressure from Ezreal, and just focused on getting those kills, getting ganks off. His skill bow was designed to have options. If he did fall behind in mid lane, for example, he could very defensively CS with Spear Shot. If he did go for those ganks, he'd have a decent level Heartseeker strike for a lot of DPS. The fights that got engaged by Underrated, what were they? They weren't normal fights, they were very good pick-off fights. So lots of ultimates had been used. The enemy team would be on the run, for example, having used Cho'Gath Rupture, having used their escapes and defensive skills. When that happened, Pantheon could ultimate right in, and there was no way to stop him from following up. Did they ever engage in just like traditional beat 'em up, you know, 4v4s and 5v5s? No. There was never really a fight ultimates had equal numbers. There was one fight where they actually did have equal numbers. Actually, in the end, more numbers when Cho got teleported bottom. And what happened to that fight? Underrated got obliterated. Everybody died. It was a 3-for-1 exchange in the end. And the reason was Pantheon couldn't survive the global presence of all the damage coming out, and the rest of his team, got killed in the chase. So when you play Pantheon, you are an assassin. You are a awesome, very DPSing, very damaging assassin. But you're not going to be good in every situation. You're not going to be good in team fights necessarily, and you have to find fights that aren't traditional 5v5s. If you're super duper far ahead, okay, alright, do your thing, kill everybody. But if you go for an offensive build, and Pantheon benefits much more from offense than a defensive build. If you build defensively, it's like, why don't you just pick an AP caster that builds Rout of Ages? If you build offensively, you need to be careful. You are going to be squishy. And I like what Angeloid did. What was his final item build? So he had a lot of gold left over, 3,000. But it was Merc Treads, Last Whisper, Pickaxe, BF Sword, Phage, Brutalizer. So he was actually going for an Infinity Edge just because that's going to be reliable. And why is reliability a big thing? Well, if he dies and he has a Bloodthirster, he loses stacks. If he dies and he has Infinity Edge, he doesn't lose anything. And that's why you'd go for Infinity Edge over Bloodthirster. Plus, the 15% guaranteed critical strike is kind of nice. It's not the most important thing, though, and actually really doesn't matter in the end, because if they have below 15% life, you're probably going to kill them with a normal critical strike anyways. But, this has been Pantheon Part 1. Tomorrow we'll be looking at a Game Boards versus Reginald in all of TSM. And Angeloid will still be on Pantheon. Will still be underrated versus TSM, but it's not going to be the most traditional game. Now, really quickly, if you do play Pantheon, just make sure you're looking for those special fights. You're looking for those engagements where Pantheon is good at. Just any sort of smaller fight, any sort of fight where he won't get bursted down instantly, and preferably cooldowns are used. Twisted Fate can start fights. Pantheon can, but it's not as good an idea. Just because Aegis, you jump in there, you're in the fray. Anyhow, this has been Part 1. I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow with Part 2. Adios, folks.